I think everybody needs to start a podcast so that we can hear from your people and your tribe, because we are something that's missing from the world. People talk about us and talk to us, but they don't understand us because they don't hear from us.
Welcome to Shaping Freedom with Lisan Basquiat, the podcast where we help you unlock your potential and redefine what it means to be free. I'm your host, Lisan Basquiat. I'm a former corporate executive, a life strategist, and the founder of Shaping Freedom. With a background spanning corporate, artistic, and personal development, I bring a unique perspective to empowering others. Listen in to discover inspiring stories and practical insights that will help you reclaim your life and rewrite your narrative. My intention is for you to gain the tools and motivation to be free in your relationships, your communities, and within yourself. This, my friends, is Shaping Freedom.
In this next conversation, I have a conversation with Monica Wisdom. She's the founder of Black Women Amplified and a powerhouse in her own right. This conversation reads like a love letter to Black women. In our discussion, we talk about the ways that Black women are taught to neglect themselves. We also talk about how the most intelligent, smartest, and most successful Black women seem to struggle when it comes to talking about themselves and sharing their own stories and voice. And then we also talked about the message that we have for the 13-year-old girl within that'll really help both you and those that you're taking care of to be on a path that is more empowered, more self-aware, and absolutely in better care for themselves. I look forward to you hearing this conversation, and you're going to want to stick around to the very end, because at the end, Monica shares a powerful, powerful exercise that you can implement and integrate into your daily practice. This is my conversation with Monica Wisdom. The person that I'm going to be in conversation with today is Monica Wisdom. Monica is the founder of Women Amplified. She's an amazing, amazing human being. I was on her podcast just very recently, and we had this really great connection and talked about really meaty, good things. And so very excited that we have an opportunity to connect today. Please welcome Monica Wisdom of Black Women Amplified. Hi, Monica.
Hello, how are you, beautiful?
I'm doing well. Doing really well today.
It's so good to see you again.
I know. It's been a very short period of time. And thank you so much for being willing to hop on my show and play and chat for a little bit and let lots of people hear us do that.
It is my pleasure, truly.
I want to talk a little bit about how you got to doing the work that you're doing in support of Black women and giving them a voice.
Well, initially it started with my own personal healing from lots of childhood trauma and all the things. And I said, I need to share what I'm going through, my healing process, the other side of it, with other people. So it began with starting with a blog, just sharing my life. And then it moved on to people asking me questions like, how did you do this or how did you do that? And so I said, well, maybe if one person wants to know, maybe many people want to know. So that's what birthed Black Women Amplified. It started off as a blog, and then it moved into a podcast, and now it's a full women's empowerment company. And specifically Black women, because we don't have places that are for us, that understand us, that acknowledge us, and that see us for who we are. And essentially, I built the place that I wish that I had when I was a 13-year-old girl. And so it's evolved, and it's growing and evolving every day, and I love it. And I love creating spaces where Black women feel safe and seen.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. I think that a lot of us who are in the work of being in service typically do that because we are providing something that was missing for us or something that we wish that we had. I read a little bit about your story online, and I didn't realize that your career started as a cosmetologist. Let's jump from being 13 and kind of wanting something, or maybe let's start there. When you were 13, what was it that you felt was missing for you?
Well, at 13, my mother passed away. She committed suicide, and I went to live with my father and a stepmother I had no idea about. So it was me trying to figure out life. And then as I got older, I initially wanted to go to college to be an accountant. I love numbers. True nerd, true geek, all the things. And then my father said, because my mother had passed, the state said that you get extra money if you go for an extra year of school. So the opportunity to do that was through a technical high school. And at that time, there were not many choices for girls. I could have gone into computer science, welding, or cosmetology, and I picked cosmetology. And I fell in love with it. And then initially, it was my plan B, and then it became my plan A.
Mm.
Initially, I was going to do it to make money to go to college, but I fell in love with the industry, I fell in love with the people, and I fell in love with the creativity. And it allowed me to do the things that I love to do within the industry. So, not just working behind the chair, but also doing freelance work, working with celebrities, working with fashion designers, and eventually becoming director of education for distributorship for Sebastian International. And so I was able to do all the things that I love within an industry that I absolutely think is amazing. And beauty salons are the one place that Black women have a refuge to talk and to be heard and to be seen and feel beautiful. So I love to be able to do that work every day, as well as educate my peers and be amongst the top of the people in the industry. Essentially, it fed my soul. So I fell in love with the industry.
You know, one of the things that you and I laughed about when we talked on your platform was that we were each other's people. And the more we talk, the more I'm discovering how true that actually is. Um, I grew up with my father. And when my parents divorced, they made the decision that my sister, brother, and I would live with our dad. And so I was raised with our father as a single parent, and then later with my stepmother when I was around 11 years old. And that relationship was one where my father was really clear because my mother, we had a relationship with our mother, and he wanted to make sure that we were clear that we had a mom. So my stepmother's role was more as like friend and guide, but it was very clear that our dad was our parent. And out of that time, I uh, really missed having a mom and having someone, I didn't know of a lot of people who were growing up without their mother. And because of that, I similarly started to give what I wish I'd had when I was going through the changes that my body was going through, my emotions, my hormones, boys, and all of that. And so I tried to give that to my sister because it was something that I hadn't had. So I wanted to talk about that for a moment, if you're willing. To talk a little bit about, because I think that an experience that actually it does happen. I mean, I don't know how commonplace it is, but I think that it is common for young women to be at that age, that 13, 14, that between 11 and 14, 15, where for whatever reason, even if they have a mother at home, it's an age, I think, where in my experience, they're comes a time where young people, young women feel somewhat alone and like they're looking for guidance and support and help through what's happening in their lives. And I know for me, part of the work that I'm doing is to hopefully help to fill some of that gap. And I know that you're doing the same thing with the work that you're doing. So, is there anything that you would say to a young person who might be experiencing the same thing?
I think it's different for everybody. It depends on their circumstances. But what I will say is that even with a mother being gone, you are enough. You're not missing anything. You were born with everything that you need, and your mother was with you for the time that she needed to be with you, to guide you for the time that she needed to guide you. And that's what I learned. It took years to get to that place. But I remember when I was young, my mother sat me down. I guess, I don't know in her spirit if she knew, but she sat down and told me everything. Too much for a kid to know about sex, about my period, about life. She just sat, we sat on the floor in her bedroom, and she had a beautiful closet. My mom was a glam girl. I was never that girl. And she sat me down and she said, "Let me tell you about boys." And she told me all the things about boys. And she even sat me down one day. My uncle was a weed smoker back in the day. And she said, "I want you to smoke a cigarette. I want you to smoke a weed. And I want you to drink this. I want you to know what it feels like so you'll never do it again." So it was like she knew in her soul that she wasn't going to be around. And so we have to look for those divine guidances that our parents gave us before they left this earth. And just know truly what I would tell a young girl is that you have everything you need. She gave you all that she had to give, no matter how she passed away. That was all. It's everybody's destiny to go to the other side.
Hmm.
And sometimes people go earlier, sometimes people go through childbirth. But I promise you, one, you have everything that you need. And two, she's always with you. I talked to my mother this morning. My mom is still with me, and I can see her influence on me. I look in the mirror and I see her. So she's always there. So I think the important thing to know that a girl going through that and at 13 or 12 or whatever age is that know that she gave you everything you needed to succeed in life.
And I think that's important wisdom for any age, that we might be at, even once we get into adulthood. Because I think that when someone is gone, sometimes we have a fantasy about what our life might be like with that person if that person were still here. And ultimately, I think the life lesson that all of us are presented with the opportunity to receive is that we really do have everything that we need, and that life has a way, both the people in our lives, our caretakers, and the universe, everything that's coming together and forming to uh, influence our life experience. It all kind of comes together to help us from one moment to the next, from one journey, one chapter to the next chapter. And so we really do have what we need, even when what we want may not be present for us.
Hmm. And that's the block, is we think that it's not there. That's the challenge, is getting past that idea that we don't have what we need. And that's where we get caught up in our anxiety and our misunderstanding of life. Um, it's like a veil that's between you and what you really want. It's already there. Like I told you, I believe we're multidimensional beings. And people talk about manifesting, but the truth of the matter is everything we want is right in front of us. But we block ourselves. And when we have trauma and we have abuse and many of the things that I went through, that's all for a long time. I'll just speak for myself. That's all I saw. That's all I saw. And it was connected to my self worth. It was connected to the decisions that I made in life. It was connected to the people that I dated. Um, all of that was intertwined in what I thought I didn't have because I thought somebody else had it for me. And it wasn't until I had the opening of my divine eye and my hearing and my heart that I knew it wasn't anything that I wanted wasn't from other people. It was already here. It was already here.
I think people talk a lot about manifestation as if it's something outside. And I think, we have strategies for whatever it is that our circumstances look like, right? And I think that once we realize, I refer to myself as a life strategist, not because I'm the only one, because I recognize that I have a strategy for every result that I have in my life. I have a strategy for jacking myself up and making the wrong decisions, and leading me to a place that I don't want to be. And I also have a strategy for, and I'm learning more and more strategies for creating a life that is filled with joy and abundance, but the good kind of abundance, right? Because a lot of people are living in abundance, and it's an abundance of things that they maybe don't want. And I think that once we recognize the power and the ability that we have to create and to manifest what we want, it takes that veil away, and brings us that much closer to seeing the results and then being able to course correct along the way if we choose to.
Course correcting is a powerful tool.
It is. It is. Course correction is.
Sometimes you get off, you're like, where am I going? Oh, let me get back over here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's also a powerful word for the folks that we were just talking to, that you can course correct. Like, it's not over until it's over. And so you can always choose to go in another direction. And sometimes it's harder than other times. Sometimes the weeds are planted a little bit deeper and there's a little more hardened, caked dirt around it, but you can always course correct. It just takes a moment to make the decision, and then you can, set forth the work to make it happen.
Most definitely.
What is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie of all times is The Matrix.
Oh, wow.
That is my favorite movie.
Why?
I used to watch that movie. There's something, I think because when it came out 25 years ago, it was the one movie that explained everything I was thinking in my head. Because even though the conversations we're having now they're common now, but back then you were the odd kid or the weird kid, or like, I better not talk about this with anybody. But when I saw it, it was just like, oh, I'm not crazy. And the idea of just what I talked about, the veil being removed, like the scene where Neo discovered that he could stop the bullets. That's the moment when the veil is removed from our lives, is that we understand that we have the control over our lives, not other people or other entities or other situations or the government. We make the decisions for ourselves, but we have to see it. And then Trinity was everything. Trinity was everything. Even she was as strong as she was compassionate, and she loved her man. And so it was the first time that I recognized where a woman could be all the things. You can be soft and gentle and caring, and then you can go out and whoop ass. And and then you can cry, you can be sensitive, you can do all the things. And so I always had a deep affection for the character Trinity.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of us women struggle with that. We don't struggle with knowing that about ourselves. I think we struggle with sharing that and expressing that out of fear that we're going to be judged for it or rejected for the complexity that actually is the woman.
We either have to be a badass or soft and feminine. No, be all of it.
Yeah, all within 5 minutes.
Be all of it.
It depends on what's going on. Yeah. Talking about correcting course, I think I read something in your story about a moment where you had to course correct, where you were on your way somewhere, you were traveling and something happened, and that was kind of a pivotal moment for you. Will you share that?
Oh, that was it was when I first started learning about this whole internet thing. Cuz I'm truly an analog girl. Gen X analog girl. And so I had the question of how are people making all this money online? What is going on? So I went to my first conference in Tampa to learn a little bit more about it. And a friend of mine was working in New Orleans and he said, "Come to New Orleans when you get done." So if you know you're an entrepreneur, so you know that when you're an entrepreneur, everything's on you. So I was working hard to make enough money to make sure that when I got back, everything was taken care of. Everything I needed was taken care of before I left. I go to the conference, I wasn't feeling well. And it was interesting because I went and bought a bottle of Tylenol and a bottle of Advil. I'm like, I'm just going to push through. And I was losing my breath and I didn't feel good. And the first thing that came to me was the negative self talk. Girl, you just need to lose weight. You got to work out, just all the negative self talk,
The judgments.
all the judgments, all the things that anybody's ever said, just like it just flooded in. So I get to New Orleans, um, my first time there, and I was excited. But I get off the plane and I could barely breathe.
Mm.
But I'm just going to push through. I'm just going to take some medicine and push through. I'm just tired. It's been a long week and a half. I'm just exhausted. I get off the plane. I go to my friend's hotel, and he's not there because he's working. He sees me, and he looks at me crazy. I was like, well, what kind of welcome is that? He said, okay, well, let's go to dinner. And I'm walking through, the hotel was in the French Quarter, I think it's called. And I could barely walk. So by the time we got to the restaurant, I was in so much pain. Anyway, long story short, I ended up in urgent care.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to urgent care, the doctor was like, yeah, so you can't leave yet. And I ended up getting steroid treatments and breathing treatments and an x-ray that said I had full-blown pneumonia
Oh, wow.
in all 4 of my lungs. And until later, I had not noticed that my skin was turning bluish because all I was doing was trying to push through. So they were like, yeah, so you can't leave. So they gave me like 3 breathing treatments, 2 shots in my ass. And I had to sit there for 3 hours until I could get breath in my lungs. So they gave me a prescription. I went to Walgreens or wherever I went in New Orleans to get the prescription. And instead of me having a great time in my first vacation, my first time to New Orleans, I was in the bed hallucinating, sweating, and detoxing and healing.
Oh, wow.
And my friend was working on a movie. He's in the movie industry. So it was an opportunity for me to go on set, see all the things because he carries me around in his pocket. I couldn't do any of that. And by the 3rd day, I was much better. And the doctor said, I can't release you to fly until you come back and see me because I don't know how your lungs didn't explode on the flight here. And so I was like, okay. So anyway, long story short, I went back and got he didn't even recognize me. I looked completely different. My skin had lightened up. My eyes were bright. And he thought I was somebody else. And then when he realized who I was, he was like, he ran into the room. He was like, oh my God, we thought you were going to die.
Oh, wow.
What is going on? And so he was so happy to see that I looked good and I felt good and I could breathe and it was fine. And then I went to my friend's job, and the miracle of it all, I got to have a conversation with Ruth Carter, who was the costume designer. And she told me all about Malcolm X, the movie Malcolm X. But after that, I realized that I was in such a hustle and grind lifestyle. I had to sit back and say, why? Not, I'm going to stop, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But why am I doing this?
Do you know that we have a line of Shaping Freedom wellness products? Each are beautifully crafted and designed to support you in cherishing your mind, body, emotions, and soul. Carve out a sanctuary in your life with our Luxe sustainable yoga and meditation mats, essential oil candles, and more. Embrace self-care and reflection with every item, lovingly created to enhance your daily practice of spending time on you. Elevate your wellness journey with Shaping Sanctuary Collection because you deserve to feel balanced, nurtured, and inspired. Visit shapingsanctuary.com for more information.
And so it took me on a journey of self-discovery, and it helped me to redefine what success for me was. And but it took me, and it wasn't, you know how they say that God will just keep sending you messages? That was number 2 for me. The first time was a really bad burnout episode. And then this, I said, well, there's not going to be a third time because I don't want the third time.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I had to change something. And it wasn't about the things that I thought it was about. It wasn't about my weight. It wasn't about my complexion. It was about the fact that I felt like I needed to prove myself to people. It was all about my self-worth. That if I worked harder, that if I presented myself in a certain way, that if I hid the life that I came from, because of the shame and the trauma of it all, I thought it was too much for people to handle. I knew that, and my journey was to find my voice. So that was a turning point for me, and that was the journey to find my voice and to find peace. And through that journey of self-discovery, I was able to switch off that grind and hustle idea, and that idea that I'm not enough, and recognize that I am.
More than enough. That goes back to that abundance thing that we talked about earlier. Like, not just that you're enough, but that you have everything that you need.
Everything, yes.
A lot of our listeners are folks who are, and I said this a couple of weeks ago during a meeting, folks who are trying to type A differently. Type A folks that, we want to get it done. We're moving, we're pushing through, as you said. And there's a different way of doing that. And I think that a lot of times people believe that there is only one way to achieve the results that they're trying to achieve. And so what I'd love for you to share, if you can, is what were the signs that you had before you wound up in the hospital with full-blown pneumonia, or the first time that you burnt out? Like, what were the things that were happening in the months, weeks, days leading up to that, so that hopefully we can help someone to not only course correct, but to circumvent going through something similar?
How I knew I was burning out. Looking back, much of it was unresolved trauma. And I was living a dual life. And I always say life is different when the door closes. So when I'm out in the world, everything is grand and da da da. But at home, I couldn't sleep. And then when I was sleeping, I couldn't get out of the bed. I couldn't pull myself together. I had insomnia. I couldn't sleep. There would be days I couldn't sleep. There would be days, I could go without eating for a couple of days. So it was not taking everything that was not taking care of me. But if somebody called me, I was out the door. I put my cape on, like we talked about, and I was out the door. Like if my best friend needed me, I am there. If work needed me, I am there. But when I needed me, it was like, I don't know what to do. So the signs for me was not sleeping. There was the first burnout. I didn't have my cycle for a couple of months. I even took a pregnancy test, even though I wasn't having sex. It's like when
You just got to
the
check.
second coming.
You never know. They're discovering new things in medicine every day. So,
Right.
dude, it was 10 years ago, but I don't know.
Right. Maybe I sat in it somewhere, but and then I was always on 8.
Mm.
10 was just so close. It just took a second for me to pop off on people. And I always had this desire to prove myself. Like to make sure that people knew that I was smart, that I was, all the things that really didn't matter, that people didn't care about. But when I recognized that in myself was when a guy said to me that I was dating, told me, we spend all this time together, but I don't feel like I know you.
Mm.
So I was hiding myself. I was hiding myself in plain sight. And half of that was because I didn't know who I was. That's a whole nother story. Half of that I didn't know who I was. And the other half of that was it was a sign of burnout. And so I pushed myself to prove myself. So it came out in the perfectionism, like writing something. I had to make sure it was perfect. Everything had to be perfect. So those were the symptoms that I had. I could write a complete story and then tear it up and just beat myself up. So the self-talk, the not sleeping, the not having my cycle, constantly in a rage about something. For me, that was the symptoms of my burnout. And I'm sure it's different for other people, but these are things that we don't look at until we look at them. And until we get to the other side and we look back and say, oh, well, that's why I cursed that person out. Or that's why I don't have road rage, but that's why I had road rage. Because I was always on 8 and 10 was always, I never had a 9. I went from 8 to 10 and sometimes 12. And I would distance myself from people. I would really distance myself from people and I could easily deflect from a conversation. So the signs of the burnout were many things, but it all came down to unresolved trauma and connected to my self-worth. And that's what pushed me to be the best that I can be. On top of being a Black girl, and society says you have to work 10 times harder to get one step ahead. So it was a combination of things. And like I said, it's different for everybody, but we really have to take the time to examine ourselves and learn to hear our own voice in order to know that we're getting close to that point of exhaustion and burnout.
Yeah. I've heard that story a lot about having to work 10 times harder. And I think that that's what we do as Black women sometimes. And I think it's false. And y'all don't beat me up for this, but I think it's false. I don't think it's that we have to work 10 times harder. I think it's that we have to understand how to play the game and we have to understand the relationships to have. We have to build those relationships and we have to figure out how the game is played. And I think that for a lot of us, I was in corporate for a long time and I would hear that a lot. You got to work 10 times harder. And logically, it didn't make sense to me because it's like, what does that actually mean? Like, what is the end result? And what I noticed that there were a lot of us who were really banging our heads against the wall, trying to figure out how we can work even harder, living at that point of 8 that you're describing, at that point of burnout, and then wondering why we weren't getting whatever that result was. And I think the problem with that is that anything that requires us to step out of ourselves and be completely uncomfortable and punish ourselves and beat ourselves up and push ourselves through and past what is human only weakens us. It doesn't strengthen us. And that's not to say that working hard isn't important. I think it is. I do every day. I know you do. And I know many of us, many humans do. I think it's a matter of figuring out what the game is that you want to play and what the rules of that game are. and how to do it from a place of self-compassion and prioritizing ourselves. Because at the end of the day, if you're laid up, in a hospital with pneumonia or in bed for a week because you're recuperating, you're not, it doesn't balance out. The math isn't mathing,
The math is not mathing.
at all, at all.
I remember I was studying last year. I got my certificate in women's entrepreneurship. And so I was using Black Women
Congratulations.
Amplified as a case study. So I was looking for information on Black women studies, and there are none. And so I came across, and I did my whole season 3 was about self-care because of this article. There was an article in the Yale College of Medicine that said Black women are excluded from important studies due to the weathering of our bodies because of racism. And because of the lives that we live, and because we're dying earlier than everybody else, they just exclude us from studies. And that was so disturbing to me.
Mm.
And that's when I kicked into the self-care part of my company and of the podcast, because I said there's got to be ways that we can take care of ourselves and move out of this grind, because it's literally taking us out of here. It's not a game. And the fact that they don't even bother to study us, that we're getting diseases and disorders, they said 11 years, even before Hispanic women. And because of the environments that we're in and because of the racism, I said, wow, there's got to be a way that I can counteract that and make women aware of this, why we're getting autoimmune diseases and all of these other things really quickly and really strange, really, really strange. And they can't seem to find a way to fix it. It's because they don't study our bodies to know how.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the biggest neglect that any nation can do to a group of people. And if we're not aware of it, we do think that we have to work 10 times as hard to fit in to a place that wasn't designed for us. So I say that to say it's important that we stop. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, however you think that you have to win, just stop. Because that is not the game that we have to play in order to get ahead. The game that we have to play in order to get ahead is to take care of ourselves first. We live in a space where everybody else takes care of themselves and we take care of everybody else. We have to stop and take care of ourselves first.
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah. You mentioned before about the greatest thing is neglecting a group of people, neglecting Black women. And I think the greatest sin has been a society that has trained Black women to neglect themselves as the norm. I once had someone say to me, someone who was very well intentioned, made a comment to me about, or suggested to me, that I talk more about business, how to succeed in business and give business tips. And she said, I know you talk a lot about self-care, and I think people really want to hear about business and entrepreneurship. And my response to that person is that self-care is at the core and foundation of us being successful at anything that we do: parenting, relationships, business, writing a book, having successful and healthy friendships, building community. Self-care is the thing, because once you're tapped into your emotional and mental clarity and health and well-being, you're stronger and clearer minded and able to truly step into the things that you want to accomplish in the world. And if there is anything that I would love for us as Black women to hear, is that It's that we're enough. It's that taking care of ourselves is a you job. You have to do it. You can't wait for someone to come along and do it for us and show, we have to figure that out. We have to do it. And also how important it is for us to be in community with other women who are experiencing the same things that we're experiencing, because those are the ones who will understand and who can support each other, which is this work that you're doing.
Hera Hub Carlsbad is a co-working space and member community designed to empower entrepreneurs. More than just a workspace, Hera Hub Carlsbad is a business accelerator and a connected network of successful entrepreneurs. Imagine a collaborative, serene, and spa-inspired environment where you can thrive. Our unique community allows each member to be both a guide and a student, fostering leadership and continuous growth for both you and your business. Experience an uplifting, supportive atmosphere that will elevate your entrepreneurial journey. For more information about Hera Hub Carlsbad or to schedule a tour, visit herahub.com/Carlsbad. We also have locations in Temecula, Irvine, Washington, D.C., and Hera Hub Carlsbad is one of 3 Hera Hub locations in San Diego, the others being in Mission Valley and La Jolla.
I'd love to hear more about Black Women Amplified, what you're doing with that platform. How do you support women?
I support women. We have life enrichment programs and empowerment tools like great journals. I have a journal called Self Love, which takes you on a self discovery journey. I have the Soul Success journal that helps you to ask the right questions to yourself about your why, what's important, what do you need to release, and what do you need to build on. And then I have the podcast where I have empowering conversations with women like you who I intentionally have a space where people can tell their story. Because one thing that has always helped me is hearing other people's stories, especially not having a mom and living the life that I've lived. I've had to get information from other people. And so that's always been important to me. And I do coaching with women. I either do one-on-one coaching or we can do I love doing master classes and things like that where people can get a bite of what they need. Um, and basically, in my writing, my blog posts, I talk to people about life and my perspective. And my encouragement to women is that my focus is to help women tell their stories.
Mm.
I think that is the most important thing that we can do is add our voice to the conversation of America, add our voice so that we can hear and look at our lives in a new way and that we can see ourselves from a different perspective. And so storytelling is important to me. Um, I I say it all the time. I think everybody needs to start a podcast so that we can hear from your people and your tribe because we are something that's missing from the world. People talk about us and talk to us, but they don't understand us because they don't hear from us. And like you were talking about before, well, we were talking about being neglected, we've also been silenced.
Yes.
So when people are talking about having a soft life, I say get louder.
Mm-hmm.
When people are saying we need to, back off, I say go forward because I feel it's important that we do that. And I find doing the podcast, a lot of people don't like to speak about themselves. We can speak about issues and speak about society and speak about injustices. But when I ask somebody, tell me about your life, the most intelligent women melt because of the fear of people hearing about them. So my work is rooted in helping people get past whatever that is so that you can freely talk about yourself from a place of empowerment. So a lot of my work is through storytelling helping people tell their stories in a powerful way. And I have a life visioning process because I think it's important that we see our life. A lot of us have made decisions in life based off of reacting to life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful place to design your life from the place that you want to be, that emanates from your soul.
That's right.
And so my MVP process takes people through that journey so that we can envision a life that you want. Like when I talked about how I got into hair, even though I loved it, it was a decision my father made for me. You know, it was a decision that he did because that's all he knew. Growing, you know, coming from the Jim Crow South, he knew that I needed to take care of myself. He knew that at that time we needed the money from the government. And he also knew that it was just a decision from the perspective of his life. And so when my life shifted was when I made choices from the perspective of the life that I wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so the MVP process helps people walk through that journey for themselves because self-discovery is a very big part of my work, walking women through a self-discovery journey.
Yeah. And that's the key. That's the difference.
That's what Black Women Amplified is about, is helping women amplify their lives in a whole new way.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the difference between being at 8 all the time and moving yourself back, taking a step back so that you can respond to the things that are happening in your life versus reacting to them, which is the only thing that you really have room to do when you're at 8, because you're here. You don't have space, you don't have breath, literally in your case, right? You don't have the breath to actually take a step back to say, ooh, this happened. What, how am I going to respond to it? You're popping off, you know, and, moving, pushing through.
I tell everybody I was the pop-off queen. I was the pop-off queen. My grandmother had this sarcasm where she could cut you. You didn't know 3 days for 3 days that she just sliced you. I have that same thing. So being at an 8 all the time, it was easy for me to take people down. But the takedown was because I felt bad about myself.
Right.
And so when I started feeling good about myself, I realized I can use my voice and use my wit, but to build people up and to speak over my life. And so that's why storytelling is so important to me, because it tells the world that you're here, what you're about, your values, what's important to you, and the journey that you have taken.
Yeah.
Because we often only see the highlight reel, the good times. But I want people to talk about all of it. Because that's our superpower. That's the part where we get to see our own strength and our own resilience. And then that's the part that the people coming behind us need. That's the yellow brick road. Our story is the yellow brick road to help ourselves to get to where we need to go and to help others come behind us.
Absolutely. And I think there are so many of us who, like you, step into adulthood trying to live out and execute someone else's plan. I know for me, and I'll share this, when I first went to college, I went to college to be an accountant because my father was an accountant. And I'm first generation.
We
You
are
and
like
I have
twinsies.
A lot of synchronicities. All right. We are each other's people. Okay. You all just stay tuned. But I'm first generation. My father was Haitian and my mother was Puerto Rican. And, he had a plan. Right. And if anyone who knows me, I love numbers. Don't get me. I love numbers. I love data. I love analyzing it and all of that. But an accountant, that ain't me. And that was what I set into the world initially to embark on, because that was what I was told. You want to, be in corporate, you want to, do these things. And I very quickly remembered that that's not who I am, nor was it what I wanted to do. And because of that, I wound up having to rebel in order to get onto and course correct my own path to something that I actually wanted to do. I was talking to a friend this morning on my way up to LA, and he said that you spent your life doing what you had to do so that you can shift into what you want to do. And what I would love is for the folks who are listening to our conversation, Monica, whether they're the parent person, the caretaker person, or the younger person, right? Save time, save time, save brain cells, save your emotion, and prioritize doing what you want to do because you were made specifically for that thing. That's why you're here. And there are so many people who are miserable, although very successful on paper, because they're going down a path of someone else's dream. And it is almost impossible for us to feel truly fulfilled, truly filled up, truly in alignment with who we are when you are walking a path that belongs to someone else, that really has nothing to do with you. You've just been dragged into someone else's story, someone else's belief that you're supposed to be the first person to X, or you should be doing this thing because that other person didn't get a chance to do it. It's not over till it's over. That person, go to school. If you always want to go to college, how's this? You go and let this other person do, what is right for them. Even if it could be the same thing, but the ability to choose in a world where we are so, specifically now speaking to Black women, in a world where we are so neglected by other people, by ourselves, by society, by, the way, the patriarchy, choose, that's how you take back your power.
And choose yourself.
Yes.
And choose yourself. And it doesn't matter if you're 40, 50, 60. The point of power is when you choose yourself and commit to that choice. That's the secret. Commit to the choice that you made. Because many of us, especially if we're Gen X, we were not given a pamphlet of this is how you do life. Our parents said, we're done with the civil rights thing. Now you all go and do all the things that we couldn't do. So we followed the directive. And like you, I rebelled. I went to beauty school. I didn't go to college until I was in my 50s. And so I lived a life that was designed, just like you said, for me by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But what I accomplished in those decisions was always in me.
Mm-hmm.
It was always in me. I just didn't see that it was always in me. I looked for validation from other people. But once I saw that it was in me, I could care less what other people think about what I'm doing. Honestly. And more important than that, I love it. I love even when I was doing hair, the only thing that I'm doing different now and then is I'm not picking up a curling iron. But the work has always been the same.
Yeah.
Whether it was in a client in the chair or a client on Zoom, the foundational work has always been the same, transforming the lives of women. And like you talked about, it's always there. But we think it's somewhere else. We think that a degree, especially Black women are the most educated. I just had a conversation with a girlfriend. I said, do not go get another certificate. Implement.
Stop studying.
You don't need another degree. Stop studying. You don't need to listen to another tape. You don't need to read another book. Now it's time for you to write it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time for you to put out your work in the world. Let
Yeah.
it go. But we live in a society that says we need to do more to be more. No, just be yourself, because yourself is enough.
That's enough.
It's enough.
You're enough. You're enough.
It's enough. And here's the thing. And I'll say this and then we can move on. But if we weren't spectacular the whole world would not be emulating us. If we were not amazing, the whole world would not be trying to oppress us.
Right.
If we were not powerful, the whole world would not be trying to neglect us. It is not because they think we're less than, it's because they know our power. And they do everything to make sure that we don't see it in ourselves.
That's right.
So what we're going to do between Shaping Freedom and Black Women Amplified is we're going to remind women how powerful we really are.
That is right.
And we're going to take down the patriarchy one conversation at a time.
That's right. Start now. Starting now. And you don't take down anything by attacking them. You got to fill yourself up. You got to strengthen yourself. You got to remember
Fill
who you
yourself
are.
up.
Who you are.
It's not a fight.
Yeah. And if we can do that, it'll translate into hopefully others, including men, seeing themselves differently. You know, but you never change the world by getting other people to change. You have to change yourself. You know, and I love that that is the work that we're both doing. And I love that we have found each other, Monica. How can we support you?
Well, visit blackwomenamplified.com. Get on the email list so that you always know what's happening. Listen to the podcast and listen to the stories of these amazing women. And if you're a person who needs support, needs guidance, just reach out and I'll be happy to discuss how we can work together. Because at the end of the day, my mission is to make sure that all the 13-year-old girls that are 13 now and the little 13-year-old girl inside of us feels loved, supported, understood, and acknowledged. And we can all get there together in community, or we can do it one-on-one until you're ready to fly. So I hope that everybody listening takes a moment. Let me give you one exercise. Before you go to bed tonight, go in the bathroom and look in the mirror. Take off all of your makeup and just stand there and put your hand on your heart and say to yourself, you are loved and you are safe. And just say it until you feel loved and feel safe. And then once you get to that place, go write down, get your journal out, because I believe in sacred writing. Get your journal out and start to write down everything you feel. And do that every day for 7 days and chart a new course for your life.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, you are the person, like they say, you're the person you've been looking for. But you first have to see her.
Yeah. Monica, thank you so much for taking time out of your journey to share and spend some time in this space with me. I appreciate it so much. I admire you. I'm inspired by you. And I look forward to you and I have a feeling that this is not the last that people will hear from both of us together. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming by.
It was my honor, and thank you to you and to your amazing team. I wrote that down. I said, I need a team like Luciane's team.
You do. They're badass
incredible,
for sure.
And
yes.
Yeah. They're incredible.
Yeah.
So
we're growing together.
Thank you for this honor. You have a beautiful, beautiful platform, and I'm grateful to be here. So thank you so much.